When I was brought on, I was told to work with fencing, lighting, and landscaping on Greenpoint Avenue and Provost. Basically wasn't interested in that. And so I took the risk in the presentation to say that my main interest is to work with the resource of the edge of the property around the support building of Newtown Creek and Whale Creek, and to create an publicly accessible shoreline that's also accessible to the plant workers, respecting what exists. Because I am working closely with trying to make the engineers understand that there's an existing situation, that the design that's being done to bulkhead this line in Chicago and in Philadelphia, and keep plugging them and giving them photographs of the site saying we must respect what's here. The whole reason for me conceiving of this step up, step down shoreline has a lot to do with the existing condition. And you're going to see a slot between the concrete bulkhead and the Perez site that's all indented with riprap in it. And that's going to be a natural edge with granite stepping down to the water, back over that way. Between the bulkhead here you see on the left and the Perez site. That will be a natural, we're actually working on it right now, creating the structure and the bulkheading, so we can actually stage granite going up the shoreline, respecting that the shoreline has been broken down and is almost becoming a new natural edge. And it'll actually be like a natural shoreline. It won't be bulkheading going vertically down into the water. It will slope up with granite slabs. The tide will actually enter that inlet. It will wash. People will be able to sit on the granite slabs with their feet in the water or a foot away from the water. And if that can happen, that's really the beginning for me of respecting the water. My idea was to just basically work this concrete wall. It seems to be in good shape. The suggestion was that they sheet pile right directly in front of it, use it as a jig, and then connect to it, and then secure it back to a retaining wall that's actually going to be about 8 to 10 feet high, that's going to frame all the way around the site the pad and elevation for the support building. So I have a feeling that this area will be well used, people sitting, talking, picnicking, fishing, kayaking, whatever. We'll clean all this stuff up and actually clean it up before long.
Welcome everyone, my name is Alicia West and I'm DEP's Director of Public Design Outreach. I'm joined today by artist George Trakas, who's going to take us on a wonderful walk through his waterfront nature walk here adjacent to our Newtown Creek Wastewater Resource Recovery Facility. Welcome George, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, great to be here with you all. In working with the joint venture engineers in designing phase 1 of the nature walk, and then they finally gave me this piece of property between the plant and the sidewalk. I had put a stone here in the drawings that just was a small stone, and in working and coming back and forth to the site, I noticed in the reconstruction of McGinnis Boulevard this giant rock here on the sidewalk. I said I would much rather have a native rock from this neighborhood to start off the nature walk. And so I spoke to the contractor and I said, there's a rock over there. He went over there and it wasn't there. I finally found it on Commercial Street, and he went over there with a piece of equipment and brought it over here.
He just put it down for you?
Yes, and we set this up here, and on it you'll have that arrow with the nature walk, and it has the story. There's a plaque here that actually tells the story of that rock. And there's a sign here that says waterfront access. Many elements in the nature walk that actually identify local materials that you would not find on a sidewalk.
Maybe under a sidewalk.
So this is a very important kind of beginning.
Yeah.
And moving down with the trail in that little forested area with all those different trees that are identified with plaques relative to Native American uses and later industrial uses is a very important part of the learning palette of the nature walk in general. We are now at the entry of the nature walk with the wave fence behind us. The staircase here leads up over the plant. Since it's a water treatment plant and the actual effluent from the treatment of wastewater is exiting close by here, there is a smell of effluent in the air. So I created what's called a fragrance garden with many plants that are fragrant, roses, flowers, fragrant sumac to mask that. And one can actually go underneath it and explore it. and then come back up and go up the staircase to proceed along the nature walk toward Newtown Creek. We are now in the vessel, which is a 170-foot concrete form in the shape of the hull of a boat. On this wall here you will find some portholes to be able to look through to the actual functioning of the plant.
All right, let's take a little peek through one of these portals. All right, quite a view. We've got our aeration tanks, and I think the effluent tanks too.
The view to the west is of the Empire State Building, which is right on axis with the vessel, which was a coincidence that the engineers in Chicago did not realize till they got here. So it was kind of a secret of mine, of a very important element to locate people on the nature walk in New York.
All right, so we're here in the turret, which is really sort of a transitional space, right, George? Can
Yes.
you talk to us a little bit about the materials of this space and how we're also making this turn?
Well, we've been through the vessel with the rough board finish sides, simulating a hull of a ship. When we come into the turret, which is at a right angle turn from east-west to north, we have the boards on the turret are now vertical. And it creating an echo within here is it in a transition. I'm not sure you'll get it on the tape.
It does echo.
And again, as we turn here and look to the south or to the north, we actually see the water of Newtown Creek.
All right, so here we are. We're at Newtown Creek.
Yes.
We've made it.
And in finally getting down to this elevation, which is elevation 4.5 feet above the actual high water point, this particular part of the shoreline was completely broken down. It was really derelict. And I said, well, I'm going to take advantage of that, not bulkheaded as we have on Whale Creek, but just create this staircase down to the water where people can actually walk down on these steps and touch the water. On these staircases are etched the process of life, geologic life, plant life, and animal life up to the upper left. An important element also is a railing here that takes the form of the water molecule with oxygen and 2 hydrogens that you actually, so you hold on to a handle that's the water molecule to get down to the water. Well, we are at a turning point here at the confluence of Newtown Creek and Whale Creek. And this is a ship bollard on which is etched the actual original watershed of Newtown Creek and Whale Creek, which you can see here. And they are etched in a way that they're very shallow up here at the headwaters and get deeper as they get into the East River. And schools know that, so they bring water and they actually pour it, and actually the water can actually go down and flow into the East River. The other element is relative to conditions when the Lenape were here, which were the native tribe. The 7 circles that we passed by as we came down to this area have place names in New York in the Lenape language, and as you read them, you're actually facing the area that it is. So there's areas that describe the ocean, the Hudson River, a little section in Manhattan called, I forget, Kips Bay, etc. Those are all had Lenape names.
There's so many elements along the nature walk that really give you a sense of orientation of this place within the larger city and along the creek and all of the tributaries here.
Yes, and another important element for me that I really love the context of is the recycling plant across the way. Many people have commented to me that when they came here, their children love to be able to see the process of recycling, which is a very positive modern industry. And sometimes you will see huge cranes picking up crushed cars and putting them in barges that go back to recycling. So that's an important element of a learning palette on the nature walk.
Yeah, and we sort of have that juxtaposed with the sort of beautiful landscape and,
And the plantings, yes. Yeah. Plantings are very important, as we can see here and hear possibly on your microphone. Many birds use this as a habitat. Mm-hmm. So we are on Whale Creek, and we are actually, I'm standing at the top of a seating area by the water with no railing. Very important element of the nature walk, that you can actually, that the nature walk respects the intelligence of people that come here, to be cautious and also to use the fact that there's no separation between them and the water. Yeah, we're now going to walk into phase 2 and look at some of the text on the 3 vessels that really start with the initial stirrings of energy in the beginning of the cosmos and go all the way to where we are today.
You're covering a lot of ground, George.
Yes, covering a lot of ground. This is the beginning of the first gangway into the first vessel in phase 2. As we can see up there, the vessel has a lining of locust planks, which reflect some of the planking that was reflected in the concrete in phase 1. The element of wood is an important connector to the association with vessels. And on the vessels, on the gunwales, which are the railing, we have a series of etched words that begin with the first rustling of energy in the cosmos, with quarks and leptons. And as we move to the end of the first vessel, we get to hominids and the beginning of human history. As in vessel 2, we extend that to the end of the 19th century, and then vessel 3 is essentially our modern era in the 20th century and the 21st century, taking us to the present.
All right, George, will you tell me about my favorite word on the gunwales? It's bladder wrack. What is that?
Bladder wrack is seaweed, and the reason why I chose the particular musical connotation to it is relative to the words on either side of it. The other reason why some of these words are a little obscure is that I know kids today have their phones, and if they plug that name into their phones, it'll give them the derivation, where it comes from, and everything else. So that's the other element, is that I think younger people, when they get, or classes, for example, a teacher might come in and say, pick 4 words, on each side, and work with a partner and work with it. Find out what the derivations are and what's the relationship with the words next to them. I mean, it's really a learning palette.
And it's great fun, too.
Yeah.
We found a nice place to sit on phase 2 in this beautiful turret. You want to talk to us a little bit about this and where we sort of turn the corner in phase 2?
Yes, this is our second turret, now lined with actual wood rather than wood embossed concrete. We've come across the 3 vessels and the history of the cosmos etched into the gunwales. We are now going to go over a second bridge, the same size, larger than the first one, that enters into phase 3. We are looking at skimmer vessels, which are part of the process of the DEP cleaning up the floatable refuse on the rivers in the city. We are in phase 3, the largest part of the nature walk. There are elements in phase 3 that relate to history beyond Greenpoint. Phase 2 and 3 were planned and part of the original proposal in 1998, and this went into design in 2002. went into construction in 2017, and we just completed it, and it was opened at the end of March of 2021. The granite table underneath the boat shelter has etched the plan of the Monitor, which was the boat that what was called the ironclad that was built at the Continental Iron Works on Callier Street in Greenpoint that blockaded the Merrimack, which was the Confederate boat down in Virginia to end the Civil War.
So we're on a bridge that is running over a swale that runs down the center of Phase 3. Can you tell us a little bit about that, George?
Yes, well, the vocabulary, or the main vocabulary of Phase 3 is similar to Phase 1, where you have that walkway that slopes to the middle with that granite strip going down into the lily pattern by the creek. In this case, it's much wider, and we have this swale here going down, collecting the water from the site into the rain garden, which is a requirement. We cannot drain the rainwater into Newtown Creek or Whale Creek. And the various elements are nurtured on either side of this swale, which is an important element of kind of a spine of Phase 3.
So we're in the fossil area now, and there's a couple of different elements that are really interesting here, inclusive of this right here, also the pavement, and also the trees. And I wonder if you could give us a little explanation behind this.
Well, I was contacted by the DEP from people at the Schoharie Dam site who had found some fossils, some ancient tree fossils. And so I went up there and selected them, and they saved them, and here they are. There are 5 of them. So that the walkway you see here have marine fossils in them, again, from the same era. This all links into these ancient trees, and with these pentagons, which are ginkgo trees. Again, some of the most ancient trees that I could find to relate to the age of these areas. Obviously, the trees are much younger than these fossils. But again, it's an ensemble of things that relate to early history.
How old are the fossils, George?
385 million years old.
That's old.
We are sitting in front of a star seat. There are 12 of them, and etched onto them are constellations, navigational stars that ships used for navigation for centuries.
And these light up at night?
Yes, right? These are solar powered with photovoltaic panels. So I love that aspect of the stars are being lit by the sun. Important on the project to create a celebration of water, of drinking water. So, because the DEP supplies every tap with drinking water. And so I really wanted to make a temple to water, where you can come in to a structure that relates to shelters, both primitive but also sophisticated, as I mentioned earlier, the Pantheon in Rome, and to be able to come here and be able to drink water. And with the benches around there, you can actually watch people come in and sacrificially be part of the process.
Talk to us about the fountain.
Yes, so that the stone is actually a 3.4 billion year old rock that I've worked with before, and it comes from a period in Earth's history when there was actually no water, standing water on Earth, because it was so hot, everything was water vapor. But again, it does relate to the fact that the reason why we're here is because H2O exists on Earth, on our unique planet. And this celebrates that, where you can come and drink it.
And I think even more specifically, New York City would not be New York City if it wasn't for our water supply. So let's talk about these footprints over here.
Yes. So,
because they're one of my favorite parts.
They're part of from the opening.
Look over here.
You have starting at the opening, you have bare feet that relate to the Lenape, to moon boots, the fact that humans were able to go to the moon. So again, it's just one of those extremes of human accomplishment, but both having to go to water to survive. An important, very important part of this structure is that there is a lantern with sunlight being able to come through and penetrate and come down onto the fountain. It doesn't necessarily, because the sun is not necessarily directly overhead to hit this, but there is in a sense, it's kind of like a sundial. The fact that you can look up when you're sitting around there and look up at the sky.
In phase 3, we get a really good peek into the wastewater resource recovery facility, which you can see behind me, our famous digester eggs, as well as some of our many odor control vessels. And we're just right up against the nature walk here, and there's a really nice interface between our DEP facility and the nature walk, public access. All right, so we've reached the other end of the nature walk. Thank you for coming along with us on this wonderful tour. Thank you, George, so much for taking the time to walk us through. I've learned so much. There's so many details here that you've just put so much attention towards, and it's a kind of landscape that you could walk through and enjoy and maybe not pick up on those things, but when something catches your attention, it just kind of triggers that curiosity, and I think it's such a special treat to be able to walk through with you and have you talk about all these things with us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much also for having me here and for collaborating all these years on getting this realized.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an extraordinary project for the DEP, and I'm very glad to be part of it. I'm very thankful that it was realized because of you all.
Well, thank you, George. And thank you all for joining us. We hope you come visit the Nature Walk in person soon.
I mean, basically, we learned everything from nature and from the animals. There he is. Oh, I'm so glad he showed up. He's a good ally.